tells a lie. James was cross. "Shunting for a slow goods train indeed. It's ridiculous," he chanted.
You're never happy, are you, James?
Edward smiled. "Only because the fat controller's put me on goods work," James huffed. "He said I was getting too big for my wheels. Me!" He banged some trucks into a siding. "Take care, James," Edward cautioned, "or else you'll get into trouble." "Pah!" snorted James. "What do you know?" And he reversed sharply. "Come along," he barked to the trucks. But the trucks didn't come along. They bounced off his buffers and rolled into a brake van, which carried on rolling.
Through a wall.
"Oops," said James.
"Yes," said Edward.
"Oops." The fat controller came to the yard. "James, I am ashamed of you," he said severely. "You can stay in the shed until I can trust you again." James looked like he was going to cry. Edward spoke up. "Actually, sir, it was my fault." The fat controller raised an eyebrow. "I am surprised, Edward. I thought you would take more care shunting." "Well, you know how it is, sir," James cut in. "Edward's so old and weak and pathetic that something was bound to happen. I suppose." The fat controller looked between the two engines. "Perhaps, Edward, you should go to the yard and reacquaint yourself with trucks again. James can run your branch line." James was horrified. "The branch line? But, sir—" "James!" "Yes, sir." And so, while James ran his branch line, Edward went to the big yard. Duck was happy to see him. "I'm glad you're here, Edward. We've been so busy, it's nice to have an extra pair of buffers." "Don't go causing any accidents, mind," sniffed Henry. "We don't care for, carelessness," Edward finished. "Don't you worry about me. It was James who had the accident anyway." Duck was surprised. "Then why did he blame it on you?" "He didn't. I blamed it on me," replied Edward. "Oh, I see." "Beg pardon, of course, but that will come back to bite you on the buffers," said Duck. "I know. Lying isn't a very honest thing to do," sighed Edward. "But it felt like the right thing at the time." Edward and Duck worked well together, and shunted trucks and coaches happily for the rest of the week. Even so, Edward was glad when the inspector came to tell him that he was going home. "You'll be double-heading with James' goods train," he said. "He's waiting at the harbour." "Yes, sir," said Edward. He wasn't looking forward to seeing James.
"I'm not sure I like the positioning of that bogey bolster," said Edward.
"Don't you worry, just get on with it."
Edward had hoped he'd be a little humbler, but James was just as impatient as ever.
"Making me pull trucks, making me run a branch line, making me shunt. Pah!" "You might not have been doing anything at all," said Edward sternly, and that shut James up right there and then. James' train was a fast freight to the other railway. He was making a special stop at Edward's station to drop him off. James didn't like having to do that at all. Come on, he barked. No hurry, Edward grinned. "We'll have to do some smart work so that I don't miss my path," James retorted. But he needn't have worried. With the two engines pulling the train together, they made excellent time. They were approaching the station when Edward saw the signal diverting them onto the slow line. "Whoa!" he cried. "We're being shunted!" Both engines braked hard. The trucks bumped into each other. "Oh! The bogey bolster! Oh no!" exclaimed James. "It'll come off at the junction."